Now to that shocking loss in the music world. Today, fans around the globe are mourning the death of former One Direction band member Liam Payne. Officials in Argentina say the British singer-songwriter died Wednesday after falling from the third-floor balcony of a hotel in Buenos Aires.
Medics there say they received a 911 call from that hotel earlier about, quote, an aggressive man who could be under the influence of drugs or alcohol. Now, right now, police are still investigating. It's unclear if any substances were involved. Overnight, dozens of One Direction fans gathered in memoriam outside the hotel to light candles and sing songs. Payne was one of the band's original members when it was formed back in 2010. He later launched a solo career in 2017 after 1D went on hiatus. For more, let's bring in entertainment journalist Brian Balthazar. Brian, I mean, this is just a heartbreaking loss for so many fans. We know Payne leaves behind a young son. What are people who work with him or who just loved his music saying about him as they pay tribute?
Right. Well, to your point, this is incredibly shocking. He was 31 years old and immensely talented. Much of the celebrity community obviously responding. Charlie Puth, actually one of the first people that Charlie worked with was Liam Payne. He said, "I am in shock right now. Liam was always so kind to me. He was one of the first major artists I got to work with. I can't believe he is gone." Zed, another collaborator of Liam, said, "R.I.P. Liam. I can't believe this is real. Absolutely heartbreaking." You know, we talk a lot about his amazing success in One Direction at a very young age, and then he went solo and had immense success then. In 2017, he released a single called Strip That Down. 2019, an album. Over the course of his solo career alone, he sold 18 million singles, 2.4 million albums, 3.9 billion streams. But none of this overrides the fact that he's been very open and talked about the struggles that he's had over the course of his career and his life with mental health, addiction. He spent 100 days in a rehab facility and was very open about talking about how he was trying to grapple with his relationship with pills and alcohol. And obviously some of the reports that we're seeing was some erratic and aggressive behavior. Of course, there are more questions right now than answers. Some of them we may never get, but this is a significant loss for an entire generation of people and the community as a whole.
So, Brian, the circumstances of his death are still being investigated, but we know in the past Payne was vocal about struggles he'd had with addiction. Do we know anything more about this trip he was on? Anything we'd seen there or recent challenges he was maybe having with substance abuse?
Well, we do know that he went to Argentina to see his former bandmate Niall Horan perform, and he alluded on social media that they had some things to square up. He did acknowledge that nothing serious, but that they had lost touch, they haven't talked in a while, and that he had some things to square up. He had been somewhat public at times about it's kind of an uncertainty to the relationship with him and his bandmates. And so sometimes he would then say something and then he would take that back. But we do know he was going to see Niall perform, and that during the course of this visit, he posted quite a bit on Snapchat. In fact, the same day that yesterday he had posted on Snapchat. It's hard to tell on these apps what and when these posts were videoed and taped and then later posted. That's not always exactly at that same moment. But he appears relatively, even-keeled in that video. But we do know that then later in the lobby of this hotel, he was acting aggressively and some say potentially under the influence of alcohol or some sort of substance.
Brian, One Direction's been on this indefinite hiatus since 2016. Obviously, we know the success Harry Styles has had, as well as Niall. You touched on some of Payne's successes since he went solo, all those millions of albums sold and things like that. Talk a little more about what he has been working on in his career over these last 8 years.
Well, a lot of people might assume that the dissolving of One Direction was a difficult thing for him. But in fact, he says some of his most difficult times were during the touring, that there were times that the schedule and the life that he was living at that time was so intense that he was unfit to perform, and yet he still did. Actually, having left One Direction, he said, gave him the time to kind of rediscover himself and recharge. But then, of course, he did acknowledge that later on he did have to go to rehab, spend 100 days there without any connection, no phone, to try and refocus on himself. He had been in and out of a relationship with his girlfriend and the mother of his child quite frequently over the past couple years, and it was playing out a little bit publicly, and that we could see that there, and we could read from reports that there was a lot of difficulty in that relationship. Of course, we don't know. This is one of those questions, and many of these questions that we'll have will never get answered. We know he had professional success, but as we all know, professional success and financial success does not equal mental health, and that's why it's important for all of us to look out for each other when we see that they're suffering.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.